Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today joining myself and Jim Simonetti are Danny Lennon and Graham Diamond. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
It's a real pleasure to have you in from Clyde Football Club. We've got the manager and the sporting director, so brilliant that you're taking a wee bit of time out of your busy schedules to come along. We've been talking a wee bit about youth football over the last few weeks, and it's fantastic to get an insight maybe into how that works at the top level, because Danny's won trophies at the top level of football, and how it works where Clyde are these days. Sometimes we take it for granted, or Celtic could maybe loan players to this club or that club. How does it benefit you guys as well? How is that working? How difficult is it during pandemic to get players in, and everything else that might come to mind during that conversation? So thank you very much for being here today. The first thing is, I've got a bit of concern, and you guys can maybe tell me or allay my concerns. I feel that there's a lot of Celtic prodigies on the way out the door before we've even seen them performing. So the other day there, we got news that Conor McBride was away to Blackburn, and that follows Liam Morrison and Barry Hepburn going to Bayern Munich. And there's rumours, unconfirmed rumours, that Dembele might be on his way out as well.
He's coming to Clyde.
There's your exclusive.
There's an exclusive. Well done.
My concern these days, Danny, going back to you playing, there's no reserve league. There's a bit of a void between the development players and the first team. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think massively. Way back in the day, I always recall, my younger days at Hibs, and clubs looked to farm maybe younger players out to junior clubs. But there was a real competitiveness in the reserve football. It was proper. The first team played at one stadium. The opposite venue, the reserves went to the other side, and you're playing against real good quality, experienced players, maybe coming back from injury, players that are needing games, etc. And I thought it was a great learning school. And I think that bridge, I think players technically are brought up very sound in today's game. But they still need to cash in and get out there and get the experience of what men's football's all about.
See, when you were a youngster making your way in the game, maybe at Hibs, and you were playing for the reserves, and maybe you were playing alongside a seasoned pro, an old Grizzly pro, Danny, would you learn a lot just by playing with them, without the textbook, without the kind of coaching, just by seeing them by example?
Yeah, no doubt. John Collins was a young one, or slightly older than us, but played for maybe 3 months in the reserves, while he was making that breakthrough into the first team. You could see the levels where he was, and I thought he was a prime example and someone showing you the direction of how hard you had to work, in terms of where you had to be to play at that level of football. I recall even later on, Stevie Archibald came to Hibs at that time. Him and Alec had a fallout, and Stevie was put to the reserves, for somewhere to play. But I must admit, he acquitted himself fantastically well, and he was absolutely terrific for us young players, to go. And I've never seen a player, play in the half turn and get his body between defender and ball as much as Stevie, and get on that half turn. And he had a touch like a butterfly, velvet. So it was, yeah.
I'm imagining you as a teenager, and you're playing alongside an ex-Barcelona player. For Hibs reserves. You're going to learn from that, Graham, eh?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. The point that Danny's making there about the reserves, if you ask most people in the game, they'll all tell you that's where they learn the game. Any young player coming through learns that, and that's definitely what's missing. Because if you had a player who has a good attitude, some of them, the players coming down, don't, and that can be detrimental at times. But if you can get a good, experienced player, you'll learn more from him in one game than you will do, in my opinion, in perhaps a season of academy football. Mm-hmm. And that's just by seeing what they do, listening to what they say and just being encouraged, and at the same time maybe a wee jolt as well when you're maybe not doing something. So it's, for me, reserve team football is a big miss. However, I understand the reasons why maybe it is no more. Personally myself, I would love to see it coming back, but finances will always dictate what happens there.
I was going to ask, because I know that the financial element was one of the reasons, certainly, for the Reserve League being scrapped when it was scrapped. A lot of clubs were struggling to pay the overheads for it, weren't they?
Yeah.
Do you see a time, Graham, where we bring it back, or going back to something that has been proposed in the past? Do you think that maybe some Colt teams at some stage will be introduced? And I'll come back to the Celtic Colts playing against yourself, Danny, because that was tremendous when you came on as a 50-year-old. Do you think that is the way to go? Can the young guys get experience by having... Because they do it in Spain, don't they? The B teams are playing in the pyramid.
Yeah. At the moment, and I'm not too sure how many people are aware of this, but both Celtic and Rangers wanted to have their Colt teams put into the league structure. And I think it was more timing than anything else that didn't happen for this season coming, or the season which should have been started there in last week. And the proposal was for to let the two Colts teams in, but there wasn't enough time really to digest the ins and outs of it. So it was knocked back as part of the league reconstruction meetings for the Hearts and the Thistle case scenarios and whatnot. I think that was taking more precedence. However, what transpired from that was they went away and had a great good think about it again. They did their sums better, and they came up with a new proposal. Now, what happened was Celtic took half the teams out of the 42. I think they took 20 teams, and Rangers took 20 teams to go around and speak with them and explain exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. We had a meeting with Rangers because we were in that part of the divide, and Craig Mulholland, who's the academy director there, explained to us exactly how it would work. Mm-hmm. Now, in theory, I thought it was a good idea. Financially, it was always a good idea as well. And they were proposing that it starts next season, so it'll be season 21-22. So I think it's got a good chance of happening. Obviously, it'll go to a vote with the clubs and they'll decide upon it. But for me, that would be good for them. Now, they were also talking then about maybe an Aberdeen Colts and a Hibs Colts or whatever. How that then morphs into the bigger picture, I'm unsure. But I think it's worth a try to get league reconstruction in, which could possibly be Premier, 14 clubs, Championship, 14 clubs, so there's 28. And if you had the other 14, which would make it 42, if you also added in the Celtic Rangers Colts, that'd be 44. And potentially, and I'll just take a couple of names here, Kelty Hearts or a Auchinleck Talbot, for example. Because what's happening at the moment is, and Danny can actually back me up on this, clubs like Kelty Hearts and BSC Glasgow, Drumchapel United, all these teams who are in now in the pyramid of the lower leagues are spending absolute fortunes on signing players. Yeah. So much so, we can't compete with what they're offering. Now, that can't be right, that when a Division 1 club is struggling to compete with a club who, with all due respect, a junior club, and some of them are even, if I take Drumchapel United, for example, in existence for, 10 minutes, and with all due respect, are able to offer players such as the ex-captain of Hamilton who played in the Premier League last year, and we can come nowhere near that. No. So if you take those two clubs and make it a potential 46, which would make it 14, and maybe an 18, so that the team who are playing in the Division 1 then, they would only play each other twice, so it's 34 games. The rest could still play their home and away games, plus then the cut-off, whether it be the top 6 or the top 8. So these ideas are floating about at the moment. It is exciting, I think, and a real possibility of making real change. However, I would just like to maybe caution with the amount of clubs who are splashing out a lot of money. There is maybe only one or two that can be successful. What are the other 8 or 9 going to do when they're not successful? One, I'll tell you what, he'll get sacked because he's the manager of that club. Yeah. They spent fortunes and they haven't made it. They maybe came in second. That's not good enough for the amount of money.
So these clubs are putting themselves right up there like ducks at the shows, waiting to be shot down.
Yes.
But you look at it, how long can that be sustained with these other teams? You're talking about the Drumchapel Amateurs or the Kelties, whatever.
Drumchapel United.
Drumchapel United. Given this type of finance to these players.
It's short-termism, Jim. That's what it is.
Yeah, of course it is.
You know, for a club like Clyde since 1877, my priority as a sporting director, first priority is to ensure that we're still in business this time next year through this pandemic.
So here's a question for you. So you've just signed, you've got a player in loan from Rangers, Matthew Shields, left back, 19-year-old.
Yes.
Players like him, you're looking at John Jack, St Mirren, and Josh Jack, and Jay Henderson. Yeah. Just checking a few things. So how do you then afford a player like that that's coming in from, whether it be Rangers or Celtic or St Mirren? How does that work?
Well, we have an arrangement with the clubs because of a relationship, and maybe I'll let Danny touch upon it, as he had a better relationship with St Mirren.
I think the likes of these players come in, they need access this season, you know, to competitive football. And getting players of the ilk of Matty Shields, you know, Josh and Jay Henderson, we take it as a compliment, you know, that Premiership clubs are approaching Clyde Football Club, and I think that goes to say that all the good work that's been put in place, the foundation that is in and around there, and possibly the style of football and the philosophy that myself and my staff and the football club has. So it's great to build an easy relationship up in there, you know, and as much as we're helping these players have the access to go and get in first, or the opportunity of first team football, it works both ways. You know, you need a helping hand for the lending club, to make it financially viable. Yeah. You need that, and I think going back to what you were talking initially about the Celtic and the Rangers Colts, I think if everything is caught up and the finances are dealt with properly, you know, for the other clubs in there, I actually think it would be great that these guys are out there, because they're the crop. They're the ones that are investing heavily, you know, with their finances, and the best kids in and around the country, or even other countries. They need access to that, and I think that overall these so-called better kids given access to first team football, I think overall that would help our national game as well, no doubt.
But you look at these players that's on the periphery and the young players that's coming through. Correct me if I'm right here. The young fella, Matthew Shields, was he previously as a youth player at Celtic? Then he went to Rangers. Now he's coming with you guys. So part of his development, will you put him into the first team, or has he got to play in the first team when he's loaned out, or is that down to you guys?
Listen, you'll never have a gun held to your head. You know, the boy's got an opportunity, he's got access there, you know, to come and play. That any kid or any player coming in under your care, you'll help shape, guide them, you know, and look after them. But they've got to earn the right, and they'll certainly be given an opportunity. Like any footballer out there, they've got to earn the right, you know, if they want that jersey week in and week out.
Well, that's good to hear, Danny, because you wouldn't me, if I was the coach sitting there, I wouldn't like to be dictated to that if I'm bringing a player in, I must play him. But that's refreshing. Paul, you were going to ask a question there?
Well, Danny, you mentioned John Collins, obviously, you know, when you're coming through at Hibs, and he's famed for his, you know, commitment to his fitness and his diet and that type of thing, and he had a fantastic career. I was a huge fan of Collins when he was at Hibs. I watched him at Easter Road quite a bit when he came to Celtic, and then obviously went on to do great things elsewhere as well. At 50, playing against the Colts, you must look after yourself as well, Danny. What was your thoughts on John's comments in and around the mentality and the culture of Scottish football? He was talking recently about how he wouldn't personally like to manage because he would find it difficult to get them into the same mindset. Is that something that still exists in Scotland?
I think when you've done as well as John Collins in the game, you can say virtually anything that you want, Paul, because you've got the money in the bank to do that. There's some of us out there that have still got to go out there and make a living and make help and shape and improve these guys. We're just going to stay behind the scenes there and not attempt to change your game. I understand totally what he's saying. He's been fortunate enough to play at the highest level, and he earned the right to go and play at the highest level. But what we need guys like John Collins with that experience, to bring it back in. Very successful at Hibs when he was a manager coach there. And I think, like anything in today's game, it's a massive, massive part to play in it for me, Paul. I remember growing up as a kid, or even becoming a young coach myself. They always spoke about the four aspects of the game: technical, tactical, physical. And the one that we always sort of dabbled in was the mental attitude, the psychological one. For me, I think that's the most important one now. As a coach, even as a player, is to try and have that mindset. And not every single one of them do, but as coaches, you've got to try and guide, shape them, into the right path. And I think if you look at even the average player that's playing in my opinion, the best league in the world, the Premiership down south, they're athletes, first and foremost, proper athletes.
See, when you look at some of maybe the Celtic names that I've mentioned, the young teenage guys, and they're looking around at maybe some of the big clubs down south, the wages are a part of that. I totally get that. They might get a massive big wage increase. I think Aaron Hickey's the case in point. If he moves to the Bologna or Bayern Munich, then he's going to have a massive wage increase. But surely that's only part of it. Are they also looking at the development? Do you think agents are playing a part at that age as well? I mean, why can't we nurture that talent in Scotland? That's my big concern.
I think financially is the main driver in that. I think the modern manager, we've got to live with agents. They're a big part of the game now.
Yeah.
So they are. The advice that they give, there's so much access and so much money going about there. And I'm a big believer, Paul, the amount of money that particularly comes into the game down south, in the Premiership, etc. And we talk about the salaries that players are getting. The players, in my opinion, should be getting the big money, that's coming in there. Why is it going out to the agents? It should be coming into the people that are sacrificing themselves every single week. So understand that. Where that then dries, is then the player, is he driven by, going out there to make a great career for himself and do the best that he can, compete against the best players in the world, or is he quite happy to have instant success and anything that money can buy, and that's enough for them, and I think that's where we probably lose a great deal. We've seen many a good player going down south, and lose them. You talk maybe 3-4 years later and you forget about that player. What's pleasing to see now, you see the likes of young John McGinn, Kenny McLean going down, and they're starting to make a name for themselves, and that's very, very pleasing.
Hopefully we can talk about a couple of their players, because I know you were part of the development there as well, Danny. When did it become clear to you as a player that you had designs on yourself to be a coach? I mean, I had one eye on Raith Rovers because of one of my local clubs, and I seen the transformation under Jimmy Nicholl and winning the League Cup. You scored against Bayern Munich the following season. At what point, or was there a manager that maybe you looked at and you thought, that's quite inspirational, I want to move into coaching?
I think, Paul, I've always been engrossed with coaching. I always enjoyed training, and not just to turn up as a player, but to take what you had, to be the best that you could be and what you learnt from that day. I think you talk about, all managers, and I think you've got to look back and look at all the managers that you've played under, And there's some managers there that have learnt great things, and some managers that, no, I wouldn't use that, but it's still an experience of where you are. John Blackley, who signed me, you know, for Hibs as a young 15-year-old boy, I thought he was absolutely fantastic in terms of, I met John I only worked with John for maybe 6 months, didn't even really work with him because I was part of the reserves, etc. there. But it always, any times that I came across John, and even still today, always asks how the family and that is. So he always made it personal. He was fantastic at that. Alec Miller, who then came in the back of John at Hib, was an absolutely fantastic tactician in that era. You know, so he was very methodical in his approach and his detail in the game, which, you know, I would say so myself. You know, you try and leave no stone unturned. Jimmy Nicholl, just for his enthusiasm and his love and turning up there, you know, and making an environment that you're happy to come in with a smell and go out with a smell. John Lambie, Marcel and Graham spoke about him. You know, he wasn't renowned as a fantastic tactician, but what he absolutely had was an eye for a player and experience players in there and people that could go and manage a dressing room. But what I loved about him was his honesty and his integrity. John could shoot you down in one sentence but pick you up in the next one. So it was absolutely fantastic man management. So I think you learn a great deal, but what you've also got to do, most importantly as a manager or a young coach yourself, you've got to bring your own ideas and be yourself. Learn from your experience what works for you. And I think every single day, every single week, you know, is certainly an education day. You know, I'm engrossed with the game of football, and you know, every week they're turn. Great to have Graham come in as sporting director, you know, because it gives you someone else to go and bounce off. He's had wonderful experiences in the game himself there, so that is certainly something that I'll tap into, you know. And sometimes I was mentioning to Graham the other night there, my love is to get in there and coach, but sometimes when you're in there and amongst it, you can miss a great deal. You know, sometimes you've got to come out or somebody actually physically come and pull you out there so that you get a wee helicopter approach and you can see exactly what's happening there. And I think as I've got older as a coach, I do that a wee bit better now.
I look at Cowdenbeath, again, a local club to me, and you look at some of the managers who have gone to Cowdenbeath, either as a stepping stone or to start the managerial career, and it's been a bit of a fertile ground for them, you know, when you think of Mixu, Pat Line and even Craig Levine going there. You went and you had great success at Cowdenbeath. Now, we know they're a small provincial club. They're relying on small attendances as well, Danny. I mean, Central Park is infamous because of the stock car racing and everything else. When you're looking at that yourself, what's the first thing that comes to your mind in relation to getting a club like that working?
Cowdenbeath for me, Paul, was an absolutely wonderful learning curve, and it was an opportunity that perhaps, you know, if you don't take it, may not have come up again, you know, in terms of a managerial job. I sort of had a dual role within that, you know, as well as the manager in football. I also had the general manager's job. So it gave me an absolutely wonderful insight to how a football club was run. So much so that when I did go to St Mirren and it was a bigger organisation, you know, finances, they were playing in the top league, it gave me a great deal of appreciation, you know, in the fantastic work that other people did in the football club. So it was, and you know, to understand that, because I feel that everybody, to work to their maximum, to get the best out of people, they've got to feel valued. And that was a great learning curve for me at Cowdenbeath to do that. That's
an important thing that you've just said there, to feel valued. And it's important that when you do get young players in and seasoned pros in, that they still feel valued. We touched on it the other day, and I think you just touched on it at the beginning as well, Graham. If a player has been in the Celtic Rangers system and they've got this mentality that that's where they should be and that's still their level, and then they come down into the lower leagues and they've got somebody like yourself who embraces them in and then helps them develop not just their game but their mentality, their whole mentality, to become better players within the game and the level that they're at, and hopefully go back up again. So to feel valued is very important, and the more coaches that look at that and value players when they come in, and don't just look at them as players but how can we help this person get back up and become the best they can be? And that's very important. I think that as a coach, when I've got players, make them all feel valued. You used a word earlier there as well, Danny, enthusiasm, Graham.
No, for sure.
Have we still got that enthusiasm for the young players in the game? Have we still got that? Well, I mean, we're talking here, even the seasoned pros, we've been talking a bit on a Celtic State of Mind and how the midfield at the moment is a bit congested with the amount of players that's in there. We're lacking this left back position at the moment. But if you've got a player, and it's Clyde or with the both these, and you've got all these players, but you know that left back position is needing filled. I'd be coming in, I'd be champing your door, boss. I'll play left back. I'll play anywhere for you. I'll play whatever you want me to play me. I might be a centre mid, I might be a right mid, I might be a left mid, but see that position now, that's empty. I'm in. Going to pick me. I'll do a job in there for you. Have we still got that?
Can you ask your agent to come in tomorrow morning and see us? Because that's exactly that is exactly the attitude that we would look for from a player.
You want that. You've got to have it. So all this talk, well, these clubs, they've got the players there. Back to Paul and the question, and you saying the money's good for them, but it is great. Money is good. Money's brilliant. But if you're wanting to make a name for yourself in any sport of football, you want name medals. You want everything that you can get and achieve everything within your trade. You want to become a good player. You want to get a medal at the end that you can talk about later on with your grandkids or whatever. I look at it and I say, enthusiasm, commitment, attitude, togetherness in a team. It gets you so far. We look at it. We were the underdogs in all through our Scottish Cup, Graham, eh?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Oh, underdogs. They're never going to do it. They're never going to get anywhere. Well, that team actually had enthusiasm. They had commitment like you wouldn't believe, Paul. They had a togetherness that was brilliant. Every one of them wanted to play. And you asked these kids, where would you play? Anywhere. They went to play against Lyon, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich was in the tournament. It was a tournament in Braun, Saint Etienne and whatever. They come away and they won it. They won that tournament. They come back for France. They won it. They go into the Scottish Cup. They won the Scottish Cup. They won the League Cup. They won everything. 8 of them went on to professional football. There's only one in professional football today, and that's the 1994 age group. Sorry. And then another one came in, which was Darnell Fisher, but that was later on down the line, Graham, as you know.
Yes.
But the guy who we didn't think would maybe get there, he's now got over 200 or 175 games, professional games, up at Elgin City.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they've got to have that enthusiasm. They've got to come champing your door down. They've got to burst it down. Boss, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I think you're totally right there, Jim. And you don't want the door getting you're wanting that door getting kicked in.
Correct.
So you do. And I don't see that
Put
enough.
it in.
I had an experience with a player. I'll no name him, but quite a well-known player, good profile. And we brought him in just at round about the Christmas time there. And I've worked with this player several times. In fact, Greg Wild. There you go. I don't mind saying. And we brought him in to give him an opportunity to go and play again. And he came back in, gave him a little bit of time to go and get fit, etc. Now, Greg Wild, where he's been in the game, he should have been coming in and making a difference at Clyde and sticking out week in and week out.
Yeah.
And he signed until the summer, so he did. And, it was an opportunity to put himself back into the shop window, as he put it. I says, Greg, you've not even got the shutters up, son. No, you have. But my point being there, that even when we made team selections, etc., never once in that period for the Christmas to the summer did he shut my door and ask the question, You know, he just accepted it. And I think that hunger, that desire, I've worked with many a player that are, you know, so motivated, just want to play. I've got a couple in there now. We talk about these junior clubs that have came in and offered big money. I've actually had 2 players there in the summer that got offered a great deal more than what Clyde could pay at this moment in time. But they've decided to stay because of the environment, of where they've been, and to be part of, you know, a journey that is continuing to grow. And I think that speaks volume of the character of these players. So I do.
It does. But you and I have been talking about this, Paul, about the youth players, and you know they get into that system, and it's everything's there at a time. How do you become hungry if you've got everything? You've got to have that. You've got to have that hunger. As a coach, I'm always want to learn. I might phone Graham. I might phone this guy or that guy or whatever. I don't know everything about coaching. I don't know. I want to keep bringing in, what can I learn for here? What can I learn for there? Look at the wealth. Look at the wealth of knowledge that you've actually got in your brain for these other coaches that you've worked with. But we have a saying: you take what is useful for every one of them, and what is no, you put it to the side and disregard it for the time being. But you might go back to something again, like it may be a corner kick, number 3. Number 3, he warned these Partick Thistle players when we were playing against them. They're going to come out and they're going to do these short corners, right? But it was him that taught it. Graham taught it to us, but we done that number 3, and it came off, it worked, we scored a goal, and he went, I told you that we're going to do that. So there's all wee different things in the game that we all learn for each other. But you've got the wealth of all these experienced coaches to come to you, to give to your players, and the players that you bring on, to give to their players. I know we were talking about Cowden Beef there, and I got onto this.
Oh, I don't want to name drop here.
No.
I hate it. But I will. I remember Brendan Rodgers saying that coaches are the biggest thieves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a compliment. And he wasn't saying it in any derogatory manner. He was talking about his own experience of him maybe looking and going and seeing what Jose Mourinho was doing or whatever, and taking that wee bit and not actually replicating it, but tweaking it here and there, and it becomes your own then.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Me and Paul's got a saying: Sid Vicious singing My Way and Frank Sinatra singing My Way. 2 different deliveries, but each one effective to whatever audience is looking.
And I think also taking that back even a step to when you're a player or young players out there today, and I can take this back with the knowledge that I now know of coaching and managing and my methods in the game. It's every player's responsibility to come and get as much information out of me as possible. They don't ask enough questions.
No,
I do. And I'm not saying that I'll know every single answer, but what I will do, Jim, Paul, I'll go and get you that answer if I don't know it, because I know a wealth of experienced coaches that will guide me and help, and it's something else that I've maybe learnt there. And I would encourage every player coming into the game, if there's something that you're not sure about, ask that question, and we encourage that. You know, don't be embarrassed that if you don't understand what we're asking. Let's guide ourselves through there and shape, and we'll come up with the answer. But this is the reason of why you're doing it, and you've got to understand that and why it's going to improve you as a player.
Yeah.
And that might work in terms of that player's at Clyde at this minute in time. If that player then moves on and works with another coach somewhere else, that coach might not particularly want him to use that tool, but at least he's still got it in his locker.
Correct.
So he has.
Correct. And it's there, for him to use. And you look at it as well. The best players don't necessarily make the best team, because some of the best players in there don't really want to do the work that guy out there that's got lesser ability can do. The guy with lesser ability maybe want to have the ability that he's got, but the guy with the attitude and a wee bit of ability, then he's coachable. Then he can become part of a very good team. That, I feel, is very important. The best players don't make the best team, but see when the chef or the good coach gels them all together, that's the difference.
That's probably my biggest bugbear in the game, Jim. And maybe just because of my own mentality. I'm not saying I was the the best player or the worst
No.
player, but I had an attitude. It was my attitude that kept me in the game, or still keeps me in the game. That's what's kept me in the game. You know, wasn't blessed with height, was quick, had a decent football brain, good range of passing, etc. But I think when you actually see players today in terms of where the direction of where they go, you know, they give up on it too easy.
Yeah.
So they do. And if something's not working, you know, old school, we went and fixed something that, you know, because it meant something to you. But in today's society, there are that many things that, you know, we just move on to the next one. A next opportunity will come. And who's to blame for that? I think it's us. I think it's your generations, you know, in the way that we've brought up our kids.
Yeah.
You know, not just this year, but generations before us. And, you know, we've got to... Somebody that actually spoke to me the other day. I was actually angry. A young player never turned up for training on Saturday. And I looked at my phone after training, and sure enough, there was a couple of messages, text messages. Now, I understand this is the way that young people now communicate with each other. I understand that. But what young people have also got to understand, there's got to be a respect for the older generation and the way that they communicated. Pick the phone up.
Excellent.
Pick the phone up and speak face to face. I think we're making life far too easy for the young ones nowadays. And I mean that as a parent myself. You know, we hand and lay them for absolutely everything. We've got to get back to... See me, I would bring back national service. So I'd bring back the school belt. So I would. They're the type of values that I thought.
I was always getting a school belt.
I
was always getting a belt in it.
So was I, Jim.
You know what I mean?
And they're the values that I feel, you know, there's no just there just doesn't seem to be the same respect for authority in that now.
There isn't, and it's very, very refreshing to hear this. So all the young youngsters out there and youth players that's listening and watching, attitude all the time.
Yeah.
You look at it, you're set out as a player to achieve what you wanted to achieve, or maybe you never got to where you wanted your goal was, but that goal's only set to be reached. And if you don't reach that, you move on to your next goal. You don't stay static within that. You've got to be like water. You've got to flow.
Yeah.
You've got to get to where you want to get to, and then go, right, why don't I go there? As a coach, when I come into coaching, I said, see, when I come in, I want to achieve as much as I can.
And I think that's why the top players, Jim, and the top managers are successful, because when they win something, they're on to the next one right away.
Absolutely.
They'll enjoy the moment, they'll enjoy the occasion, but they want to repeat that, and they want to repeat it again. And it's like anything. I've had a wee bit of success in the clubs that I've been at, and I've enjoyed that success. But I'm still hungry. I still aspire for more. I still have the dreams as I had as a kid playing football. I want to get back to the big league again. I want to get back to cup finals. I want more of it. I loved it. And I just think sometimes when you're certain players don't know how to handle success.
That's
you know, they think when they've had it, when they've climbed that mountain, they've got a wee bit of success, they don't know how to hang on to it. Now they do. They've got to hang on with that for grim death, you know, and start to climb back up that mountain again to get to the levels where they want to be. And I've got a great wee thing that, you know, every footballer out there makes the same mistakes. The top ones just make them less frequent.
It's, you know, when you're talking about the success and not knowing how to deal with it, I've thought a lot about that, Danny. I've never had any success in football, but just, you know, generally in life, people get so used to being at a certain level or in a certain rut that when they're faced with something that's better or success, they do actually struggle to maintain it or even accept it, that they deserve it. You mentioned something when you were making your way in the game, and the four aspects, one being the psychological, the mental aspect of it. Is that something that you've tapped into yourself as a manager? Massively.
Particularly when I went to St Mirren, you know, to get inside players' head. I worked with a sports psychologist who was great for me personally and in terms of the team. Now, since then, you know, I've learnt a great deal and taken a lot from that. Don't know everything. I'll still pick up the phone and ask for advice, etc., and how to deal with a certain situation. But some of the things I've learned, has been absolutely fantastic. I think the psychologist at the football club has got to be the manager, in terms of your one-to-one conversations with the players and what makes these players tick, what one likes that rocket, what one likes that wee cuddle. And that's good management and how quickly you identify it. And what makes good managers is that every player at some stage of the season will come off the rail. It's how quickly as a coach you recognise that and get them back on it. That's the key thing. I just feel psychologically and how you make somebody feel, how you make them wanted, before they cross that white line, certainly, as the game's developing and the longer I've been in the game in management, I certainly believe that a big part of the game's winning the dressing room before they even go out cross that white line. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt.
When you made that step from Cowdenbeath to St Mirren, 2 successive promotions at Cowdenbeath, a wee bit of a buzz developing around about the club at that time, and you in your own mindset, obviously you're going to have to tune into a different challenge when you move to St Mirren, yet you thought that a couple of players could make that step up as well, Danny. Was that a lot in your mind? Was that about their state of mind as well, to make the step up?
Yeah, I think it was somewhat for me when I took them to St Mirren, because that's where my finances dictated when I went to St Mirren with the budget, Paul, and I needed to bring in a few players. Sometimes you're better knowing the devil that you know than you don't know, and there was 1 or 2 players there that I thought, yeah, you did great for me. And I think you'll see managers that have always maybe rewarded players, that they've always maybe took them from club to club. And a great example for me was the boy Dan McGregor. I think it was £1,500 I paid for him for Trinent, I think it was. Apologies if I've got that wrong. I think it was Trinent. And he came back and he was outstanding for me at Cowdenbeath as a centre-back and also as a midfielder who, had a big influence in both boxes, defending and scoring goals. Brought him to St Mirren and he started great. His attitude wasn't the sharpest upstairs, but a desire and a hunger to learn very, very quickly. He was very misfortunate. He went out, I think, in his second season with a cruciate injury. Might have been his first season, actually. Came back after a year for the next again season, and just about the 3rd or 4th game back in it, done the other cruciate, another. Now that would have finished many a player. Yeah. So it would have just mentally, without being physical. No damn, he bounced back again there. He came through that. He then became and made a name for himself at St Mirren, getting a good number of appearances and no going unnoticed, and gets a dream move to Glasgow Rangers. Now, what a great learning curve to come from Trinent to now playing with Glasgow Rangers, to working with great coaches like Warburton, in terms of the experience and the players that he's working with there, and now to go and play with his boyhood heroes. That's the stories that grab you, and to have a wee helping hand and allow these players to fulfil those ambitions and dreams is very satisfying as a coach. Another one that came for Cowdenbeath that year was a chap called Gareth Wardlaw. Scored wonderful goals for me. He was a postman, and offered.
Always delivered.
Always delivered. Yeah,
the delivery.
Brilliant. And Gareth came, and he was an infectious big boy. Gave you absolutely everything that he had, but he didn't play every single game. But I recall in the first season was a difficult season for myself. I was used to winning week in and week out at Cowdenbeath, but now I had to learn what the top league was all about and what St Mirren was all about, and it was all about winning games. I had to change my philosophy and the style of footballers that I had to identify that quickly. And we're getting to that nitty-gritty bit of the season, 3 games or something to go. Hamilton were chasing us, and we only needed one more victory, to secure our status in the SPFL again. Couldn't have been a more difficult venue. We were away to Aberdeen on a Wednesday evening. Hadn't won up there for 27 years, and I knew it was just going to be a physical, horrible game, and the pitch was dry, rutty at that particular stage of the season. Hamilton were starting to win games. They were chasing. They were at St Johnstone that night. I'll never forget that. And it was one of the ones, because you were then starting to look over your shoulder at other results, you know. But the focus was in this moment. And this night at Aberdeen, I went with a physical side, and I played Gareth Wardlaw up top, and he was absolutely brilliant for me, Paul. So he was. And who scored the winning goal? Gareth Wardlaw. So I think that justified alone, you know, the worth of Gareth. Coming back down the road that journey, the players were all, you know, celebrating, you know, another year, which was a great achievement. It didn't fuel me. It wasn't enough for me, though. You know, I thought, no, surely we've got to be better than that. Mm-hmm. And I had big decisions to make that on 2 days later on the Friday, and let the majority of that squad go, know that there wouldn't be any more a further contract for them. So that was the difficult part of it. But it gave me a blank canvas there for myself for the following season, which, you know, let me get players in there that I feel could play to the style of football that I wanted to, and we couldn't have been that bad, because I still got letters and emails for St Mirren fans to say that they coming seasons were the best that they've seen for a long, long time.
See, when you think about that team you built, though, Danny, I mean, as a Celtic fan, obviously, we were the victims of that in your cup run in the semi-final, and we'll talk about that game as well. But often what happens is you look at what happens to the side after the manager leaves, and then you sometimes appreciate just how good a job you did at St Mirren. And, you know, to take them to a National Cup final, not only that, but to win was incredible. But through that process and through that period, you were introducing guys like a 17-year-old John McGinn into the side. I mean, from his very early days, Danny, talk to us about the impact he made in your team.
Yeah, that was another part of my remit, as well as keeping St Mirren, you know, dining at the top table year in and year out. That was the main priority. A big part of my development at Gretna Football Club, you know, I was always, you know, interested in youth football, young energy players with that attitude and that hunger, you know, and that is still the case today. So it is. But that was one thing that was in my remit, was to bridge the gap between the first team and the academy players at St Mirren. And people often say to me, Paul, you know, about winning the cup, and they were all nice moments, and getting the 2 top finishes in the club's history, you know, the 8th, etc. But the biggest satisfaction for me was bridging that gap and seeing the likes of the youth players starting to come through. John McGinn, Kenny McLean, you know, and you go back to wee John McGinn as a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old at that time. He would be playing in the reserve games, as we would call them. And I'd built that stand, and John, as you're up the stand, we all see the game differently, don't we? But you see 2 or 3 things up the stand, don't you? And as soon as John picked the ball up, I would look and I would see, right, what you seen here, John? See the amount of times that he would see something that I didn't even see up the stand and deliver the pass was incredible. I says, he's ready, he's ready. We brought him over. How did they handle the experience of training with the first team every day? Took it like a duck to water. Sometimes in terms of kids coming over to that environment, sometimes a week to 10 days, 2 weeks later, you've got to send them back over, see how they handled that. John never went back. Neither did he. He was incredible. He was, you know, everything that boy gets, he deserves, because he's got a hunger, that attitude and a desire, and a very, very respectful guy. You know, he was the one, the last off the training, he's the one that didn't have to ask him to pick that corner, didn't ask him to bring the balls out. He was the man that already had them. He knew what had to be done. It was a pleasure to work with.
Brilliant.
Pleasure.
See when I said earlier that my first priority as a sporting director at Clyde is to ensure that Clyde are in business this time next year due to the pandemic. My second priority is to ensure that this man to the right of me is at Clyde for the foreseeable future and for a long term possible, because as you've just listened here, as I'm just sitting listening to here, to the success that he's had and how he's achieved it, for us to retain this man here at Clyde is a major step, because he should be, in my humble opinion, working, and with all due respect, at a far higher club than Clyde, and definitely at least in the Scottish Premiership. So that'll be a real feather in my cap if we come back here next year this time, Paul, that he's sitting beside me still as a manager of Clyde.
Your enthusiasm is fantastic. Even talking the way you're putting it across, I'd play for you. I would come in and play for you,
that,
and I would be coming in, and even if I wasn't getting a game, I'd still go, I want to play for you. I wouldn't want to play for Clyde. I would want to play for you. I was at Clyde, as you know.
Yes,
Graham.
Yes.
I'd play for you.
No,
just like I said yesterday, I'd play for Neil Lennon.
Yeah.
I'd play for anywhere for Neil Lennon. And any player that's in that club at Celtic should be going, I'll play anywhere for you, boss. Same with your players that you've got, I'll play anywhere. You come to Jimmy Johnson Academy, and every one of the young players, if you ask them, Danny, where they play, what do they say?
Anywhere. That's
Anywhere.
the truth, aye. They do.
Mr. Hay was in. Mr. Hay. Paul, I think you're a fantastic author. I think you've done great in life. I think you've done brilliant with what you've achieved with a Celtic State of Mind. I think you've done fantastic with your books. Right? I think you've done great, and you've got great things to come. Your goal is still no reach. You've got to get even higher than what you are today. Everybody keeps going. Mr. Hayes says when the first player came in, how you doing, son? Sign the book. Paul, where do you play? Anywhere. Next player comes in. Hi son, how are you? Hi, good. What position do you play? Anywhere. Everyone. And he stopped, didn't he? He actually stopped, Graham, and he says, did they all play anywhere? He says, they all play anywhere.
It was brilliant. He did. He thought it was
brilliant.
It's a wonderful
I'll learn that
quote.
for Tommy Burns.
It's a wonderful quote.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But isn't it refreshing? It's great. But Clyde's a great club.
Yes, excellent club.
Clyde's a great club.
Really
Great-
good, really
great
good
history.
people. Really
Great
good people.
history.
Great history. I was at Clyde when we beat Celtic. We beat Celtic.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Part of the coaching staff, me and Jimmy Strafty.
Yep.
We were there. It was brilliant. It was a great feeling beating Celtic, because as a coach and you're part of that environment, it doesn't matter who you're playing. You go and go, wow, that's a result, and everybody, the togetherness and everybody that worked hand in hand to get that result was fantastic. Equally at Annan, went to play Rangers at Ibrox, battered them, battered Rangers, another great result.
And
it's fantastic.
That should be everybody's ambition in life, regardless of what you do, Jim.
Yes.
Is to go out there and try, play, compete, and be the best that you can be. So it is. You know, I think to go out there and give it your all, week in, week out. And I love that, the fact that you play anywhere. You go out there, and where do you play? Play anywhere. That is dying now, because there's so many players out there. Well, I'm here, and players will use that against them. But you played me in this position, and I really like coming off I'm right-footed, but I like coming off the left now, because I like to cut inside, and things open up for me, son. Yeah, but you're not stretching the game for me enough there, son, to exploit the space for somebody else, pal. You know,
absolutely.
And that's where, to a degree, players have got to understand that in my style of football, and the way that I want Clyde Football Club to play, we want to own as much ownership of the ball as we possibly can, because I think we're better with the ball than without it. So the first process for the ball at the goalkeeper, we've got to have a structure. How do we get on the ball at the back? How do we play through the second phase of that? And it's important that these other ones at the top of the end of the pitch, that they're disciplined enough to do what they want. Not because they're not getting a kick of the ball, that they just go here, there and everywhere for a feel.
Yeah.
I remember Alec Miller once saying to me, when I was at Hibs, and he used me, he would play a 4-4-2, and he would use me more often than not in a narrow midfield 4 on the right hand side.
Yeah.
And one game, first team game, and I came in, and he says, I thought you were the best player on the pitch today, son. I didn't feel I contributed enough in terms of possession, the ball. I said, I didn't think I get enough. And he pulled me aside, he said, you're disciplined to hold the role in the position to let others. He says, it didn't go unnoticed. Right, it did. And that always stuck with me. That you didn't have to be the best player, but you had to be disciplined to do your role within what the team has asked for you to do. And that might be that you sacrifice yourself so that your wee creative player can get on the ball in a specific area of the pitch to be more creative. You know, rather than taking 3 players on, he might only hate to take 2 on just because you're disciplined in that area of the pitch.
But you've got an environment of being disciplined. There's where he going to play Carlisle United, Jim Chapman and Joycey going to. So we were going down to play. Young boy come in as a trialist, and Jim Chapman says to him, "Where do you play?" He says, "I'm a right back." He says, "I need you to play maybe right mid tonight. What do you think?" He says, "No, I'm a right back." Never even get stripped.
Yeah.
So there was a lack of discipline. Maybe for that young player has came for Graham.
Or Jim, is it the fact that as a young player he wasn't coached better?
Yeah.
To do the same answers that your kids give. Where do you play? Anywhere. His coach allowed him just to say, "I'm a right back."
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? You've just diminished your chances by 90% of playing in the game.
Aye, but that is the mass saying. I learnt that from Tommy Burns.
Yeah. Yes.
And so on, and so we pass it on. So if
coaches are the biggest thieves, Jim.
Correct. So we all learn for each other.
You're right.
But I think that's the importance of how much influence a coach does have on young players, and that's important because I even recall the bits of success that I have, but there's no date when any time that I've been successful in any clubs that I've been at, I'll never forget the coaches that made me fall in love with the game.
Yeah.
Johnny Fordyce and Tam McCabe, you know, Whitburn Community Centre. I'll never forget they guys.
Brilliant.
They were the ones that made me fall in love with the game.
Can I tell you a wee quick story, Paul?
Yes.
So I'm down in Windsor.
Visiting a friend of yours?
Visit a friend, yes. Windsor Castle. Yeah, they were going to lock me up down there, Graham. So anyway, we get asked to go down and play. We're preparing for the Rangers International Youth Tournament. Alright? So we get down the week 10 days before it, and we were invited down by a good friend of Paul and I's, which wasn't from the royal side. His name is Jeff Haley, who made a film called Lord of the Wing about Jimmy Johnston. So we get down and we play. He thought it was great that we come down to he played down there in Windsor, and all these Celtic supporters wanted to come along and see a Jimmy Johnston team playing. So anyway, we play Windsor and Eton inside the grounds down there, and this guy asked us if we could play his team the next day. So anyway, cut the story short, Jim, that we decide to play them, and this young player's playing in the park. I went, wow, look at his attitude. Not just his skill, his attitude. He's playing right mid, stole the show. Went on after it, spoke to him. I said, "Why, you get potential to become a player. Have you heard of Jimmy Johnston?" No, not really. I said, "Well, you should really get yourself come up to Glasgow with us." Anyway, we ended up speaking to him. He was a sub. He only got a game because the guy couldn't get it. The guy was away playing with the county for in the Arsenal International Youth Tournament. Anyway, so his uncle phones us and we said, "Are you sure you got the right player? He's a sub and maybe his attitude's not the best at the times." I says, "Definitely." So we managed to get the kid up. So we then go to the Rangers International Youth Tournament. So he's in there. She says, "Remember, where do you play?" He says, "Right mid." He says, I said, "No, where do you play?" "Not sure what you mean." He says, "You play anywhere. So wherever we take you, you play anywhere." And he did. So we take him to Celtic. He eventually gets signed. His name's Darnell Fisher. Right? He started as a right mid with Celtic. He went to right back. But there was us bringing that kid up here, helping him helping to get him in on the platform where we want him to get. But he then, with a wee bit from ourselves, where do you play? Anywhere. And Neil Lennon at that particular time, he liked that attitude as well. Where do you play? Anywhere. Right. And he eventually played him at right back. All right?
Yeah, I rated Darnell Fisher highly. Yeah. He's doing well.
So that's a great story.
It's a great story. And look at it, the young man's life has went on. He's done fantastic. So we're only a wee part of it. But you're right with your coaches. You've mentioned at Whitburn. We're only wee stepping stones that help players to go on the road.
Well, just as you're saying that, Jim, and Daniel probably come in here, I had a wee saying for Danny the other week about the club, that Rome wasn't built in a day, but a wee bit of it was.
Aye.
And that's what you always got to kind of look at and take it for the long term.
I like that. Brian Clough said Rome wasn't built in a day, but I wasn't on that job.
I like that. I wish I'd have remembered that one.
I was actually watching the Damned United last night.
Oh, it's brilliant.
It's good, isn't it? Good movie.
Now this man's praise due. Danny. This man's very
Quite
good.
rightly so.
Yeah.
Quite rightly so. And this man's very good as well. So he's a good coach and a good mentor.
I've known Graham for a good number of years.
I put
in
Danny
fact, he actually put me through one of my early
courses
courses all those years ago.
He put me through him as
Helped
well.
me fall in love with the game, and you know, I opened when the board of directors were talking to me about a sporting director coming in. I welcomed it with both arms. It was important that we got the right one. So it was, and we had a couple of meetings, and you know, just picked up. You just get a feel for somebody, you know, right away. We had a couple of meetings, then introduced the staff, and you know, when you're just sitting in a room, you just feel complete, and you just feel comfortable with everybody in that room. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm on about the recruitment that Graham's now. PJ's come in, you know, the head
good
of
guy,
recruitment,
PJ.
you know, the goalkeeping coach Chris Fahey, the assistant manager, and I just said, we're complete here, you know, and it's important that when we have those meetings that we can say what we want, we can be honest with one another, but at the end of the day, you know, we've got each other's back, and we're there for one reason, you know, and that is for the success of Clyde Football Club. And I believe with the experience that Graham's going to come along, and the guiding help that he's going to give myself, you know, it'll only help improve us.
Absolutely.
I'll not need to give him much more help, I'll tell you that right
now. Can I diverse just for a wee second, Paul? Can I ask you, Graham, about your involvement with the Celtic International Elite Academy?
Yeah, sure, yeah. I've been involved in that now since 2016, I think it was, 2016. My first venture was to China.
Which we spoke about in the podcast.
We spoke about on a podcast previously. And I've loved every minute of it. Going to different countries, Australia. The best one for me, as we spoke about at length, was Cambodia.
Yeah.
So no, it's fantastic.
And are you looking for players out there, Graham? Are you looking to bring players, identify the players?
If there's any there, then certainly, most definitely. Because what they are termed as in the different areas we go to are elite player camps. Now Celtic have 70 odd partner clubs throughout the world. Mm-hmm. So the elite player camps are for the better players who then have the opportunity to come over to Celtic Park and spend a week at the St Ninian's Academy, and then if they go, and the last one I think to come over that I was involved with was a lad called Charlie. Oh gosh, that's terrible. Can't remember his second name. Came from the club in Australia called Narang. He didn't sign for Celtic, however, he has signed for Shrewsbury.
Good.
On a 3-year contract.
Excellent.
So, you know, if there's players there, they're recommended, but that's not the be-all and end-all for it. It's to form the partnership with clubs, to go over and do a bit of coach education with the coaches over there, and give the opportunity for anyone who shows a bit of talent for to come back over to Celtic.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
No,
Very
brilliant.
good.
Danny, there's a few wee questions I'd like to pick your brains about. First of all, we've mentioned John McGinn. I'm so enthused by him. I think he's going to be a linchpin for Scotland. I remember a story that Strachan told about him lifting the hampers, going back to what you said, the dedication,
and that's him.
The humility. Yeah. How far can he take that? Because we see him at Aston Villa, but people believe, and I believe, he could step up even further.
See, before you say that, Danny, see that word you've just used there, Paul? Humility.
Yeah.
That, for me, is a real, that one's right up at the top there. If you don't have humility and be humble, no matter how good a player you are, I don't think you're the real deal.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And that's been grounded for John. You know, they're very much a sporting family. Mm-hmm. You know, for the granddad involved at Celtic. His 2 brothers involved in football. Mum, sister. I think his mum played with Scotland at the netball.
Right.
So very much a sporting family, but a lovely, humble family, as you said there. For me, McGinn can go all the way. I honestly think if Villa get relegated, one of the bigger clubs one of the bigger ones would have come in for him. He would have still been playing in the Premiership. I could see him in a Man U shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it. I can see that big backside he has and the way that he turns. You know, he's got a turn in the middle of the park like Dalglish had at the top end. You know, just uses it so well and strong and bounces. But his vision and his delivery of the pass, you know, is second to none. And you look at players like John McGinn. He's graceful, you know, he's pleasing on the eye. He just makes he makes the game as if you're watching it in slow motion. You know, he's just class for me. Class.
I would have loved to have seen him in a Celtic jersey, but that's another story. That's another story.
You still might, Paul.
You never
I'd love
know.
to see that. Now, you had massive success at Cowdenbeath, brilliant success at St Mirren. And when you left the club, what were you thinking? Were you thinking somewhere along the lines of, I know the job you've got at the moment, you're using that and you're building something there. But, I mean, at that stage, I'm looking at you still as a Premier League manager.
Yeah.
You know, back when you left St Mirren.
Yeah, I think, Paul, my oldest son was going through a bit of health problem at that particular time. He took poorly when we were over in Mexico, the family holiday. So the much needed 6 months after that, I was pleased that I was out of work, to be honest, and for once putting my family first, because we know how much we sacrifice, and that's why I've always said that football managers' wives are, you know, they're diamonds. They're diamonds. Mm-hmm. So they are. But when you then look at that, and I seen myself, I'm saying, not the opportunity will arrive, and I was getting to the interview tables, I was getting to the final 3, but I wasn't getting over that line, Paul. And I'm saying, maybe it's not going to come. I managed to get I got a call for Stuart Regan to go and take Scotland under 21s, which was absolutely fantastic. Maybe in a wee bit of false hopes that there was, I thought that it was going to be a permanent job at the end of it. And I just wish there was a wee bit more honesty in that, you know, for the outset. I would have still done it. There's no doubt about that. I would have still done it. And I think, you know, it was a wonderful experience. I think I'm the only one that can say I've got 100% Scottish win rate, manager's win rate. And I loved it. And then on the back of that, I went Mike Mulroney, Alloa. Alloa were in the Championship. They were struggling at that given time. And I went in with about, I think it was 5 games to go. They were almost relegated. Went in and I think we won 4 games out the last 5, which took them into the playoff positions. We beat Cowdenbeath in the semi-final level, or to go into to play Forfar in the final. So we did, and went up to Forfar midweek, down 3-1, came back to Alloa on the Saturday, and we won 3-0 with 10 men. So it was an absolutely wonderful wee story there. But in terms of that journey, I think I waited too long in getting back in. And even then, coming out of the experience of Alloa, I'm saying, right, when's the next one going to come up? I went and played golf, my handicap, I get back down to 7, so I did. And I was loving it for about just over a year, but I was missing the game terribly. Mm-hmm. I was still getting to interview tables. I actually thought I had one up north, to be perfectly honest. I flew back, family holiday, 10 days early, so you can imagine the wife for that one, and no getting the gig. We fell short with that one. And then the Clyde opportunity came up. And I says, no, that's okay, it's second division. I says, but you might have to go down a few rungs of the ladder to come back up. But the foundation and the history of the football club, that's what attracted me to it. I was missing the game terribly, and I felt that I could could help them as much as they could help me at that given time. I needed football back in my life, and that's been it ever since, Paul. I've had wee opportunities to be the success that we had at Clyde, you know, and I'm in a very, very good place at this minute in time, and really enjoying, you know, working with the club. I see them. I remember my Partick Thistle days, always going to Clyde, how hard games they were, you know, and what a good team they were then in that championship. And that's potentially where I see Clyde as a football club. It'll be a challenge and hard work to get there, but you know, we've certainly got the right ingredients to try and make that happen.
And all that's coming, Paul, with, and dare I say it, perhaps the lowest budget in the league.
Yep. That
we will be competing in under Danny's stewardship. And that's why I'm so desperate to make sure he's still here with me next year.
Well, it's a bittersweet thing, that, isn't it? Because on the one hand, obviously, Jim and I have been keeping an eye on Clyde because of your involvement in that as well, Graham. The fact that you had a McStay and a Grant in the midfield at one point as well, I was keeping an eye on that, you know. But it does show that obviously the success that hopefully you continue to have there, Danny, will lead you to where you want to be as well, you know. Yeah,
you mentioned two quality players there, Paul, that did great, you know, and they came in as young boys that needed that experience to get first team football and games on their CV. That's what these two boys needed. And you know, I'm absolutely delighted that Raymond Grant's now playing in the Championship. You've had a wee helping hand. Personally, I think he could have went higher. You know, I think he could have got full-time football. That's my opinion of the boy. And I think it's like anything in life, you know, that if you work hard, you keep dreaming, and you get that wee bit of luck that everybody needs in any walk of life. You know, and as Graham rightly says, it's Graham's responsibility to make sure that we've got a management team in there that's going to make sure that Clyde Football Club are always competing. But you know, I think at this minute in time I'm in the right movie, and there's no doubt about that. I'm really looking forward to an exciting season and a short one, so it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and you know, we're just looking to go and hit that ground running. But like any footballer, like any coach, manager out there, I still dream, I still have that ambition, and I still have that drive to manage at a higher level. But as Graham had mentioned, I do believe that I have the qualities. Sometimes when the gig doesn't come along, or the longer it takes, and I think it's only natural you doubt yourself in any walk of life, but the most important thing is that you're surrounded with good people that continue to every now and again remember what you've achieved. And I think it's nice to reflect back on it, but not to dwell on it.
Well, from Jim and I's perspective, today's been fascinating. It's been brilliant to have you in the studio, and hopefully we can do it again sometime. We're going to be keeping an eye on Clyde from a Celtic State of Mind. I think some of your philosophies and some of the ways that you've been looking at the game are brilliant, Danny, really positive. So all the very best to both of you.
Thanks very much, Paul.
Thank you very much for your time, guys.
And thank you from Jim and I for coming and joining us on a Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much, gents. Great show.